Welcome back to another episode of life advice that you do not hear in church, or at least I've never heard this one in church. My name's Tiffany Dawn, and hit subscribe to see more videos like this. So today I'm gonna walk you through the story of my ex-boyfriends and tell you why I'm so grateful for them. Not that I wish I never dated them, or I regret the relationships, or I wish I'd only dated one person and that was my husband. None of that. No, I'm grateful for my ex-boyfriends, and today I'm gonna tell you why. And the reason I'm making this video is because when I was growing up, I felt like there was this undercurrent in our Christian culture of you only date one person. Almost like you gotta figure it out from your first date because you don't wanna have exes behind you. You don't wanna have these boyfriends or relationships that you regret or that were failed or whatever. And if you are somebody who only wants to date one person, that's totally fine and okay. But I don't want you to have that pressure on yourself thinking that's from God. Because here's the thing, like the example we have in the Bible of relationships is from a patriarchal society of arranged marriages. Like your parents picked out your spouse. You didn't choose the spouse for yourself. So of course nobody dated, but I don't think that means we have to do the same. It's just that was a reflection of the culture at that time, not God saying thou must only date one person. So I'm just gonna tell you the story of some of my exes and why I'm thankful for them. Okay, ex number one was actually a very unhealthy relationship. I got into this relationship with the idea of like, I am dating with the intent to marry this guy. And so like right from the beginning, like I was setting myself up for intense heartbreak. Because before I let our relationship progress naturally, before I let it get to a point where like I really knew him and knew if it was healthy, I was already thinking like, this is it for me. Like in my mind, we were more committed, more serious, more intimate than we were in real life. And that was extremely damaging and unhelpful. I think that my breakup was so awful because like in my mind, it was as if we were basically married. Like we literally had talked about marriage like before we were officially boyfriend and girlfriend. Yeah. And in that relationship, I actually made a lot of mistakes. He and I were both young, we're both immature, and we're both insecure. And he did not treat me right, and I did not have the self-worth or confidence to recognize that this was not healthy behavior and I needed to cut it off despite feeling like I was crazy about him, my first love, you know, like I had to end this because it was so unhealthy. And I just stayed with him and we went further and further physically, and then I felt like I really had to stay with him because I mean I wanted to save sex for marriage, and even though we hadn't actually had sex, we were getting kind of close, and I just felt like I just have to stay with this guy now. And I'm so glad that my parents sat me down and were like, you do realize that even if you get pregnant with somebody, that's not a reason to stay with them. Like you need to be in a healthy relationship. And if I were to go back in time with the confidence I have now, like I probably would have gone out on some dates with him, but I think I could have realized pretty quickly that this guy was not to be trusted with my heart, that this guy was not the kind of person who was going to treat me right. And I think I could have realized that and gotten out of it a lot sooner. So would I ever want my daughter to date a guy like that for a year and a half? Heck no. But do I regret it? No, not at all. I learned so much about myself, about God. And honestly, when I first got out of that relationship, I felt ruined. I was like, I have made so many mistakes. I'm struggling with this eating disorder, intense insecurity and self-hatred. I feel like I'm just second-class citizen. Like God can never work through my life again. And I stood in awe. I remember my mom just saying like, Tiffany, just watch and see what God's gonna do. It was so cool because that very relationship that I thought was like the biggest regret and mistake of my life, God ended up using that. And that's where this whole ministry started from. Before I started YouTube, I was traveling and speaking around the United States for months out of the year. I spoke with thousands of people, and hearing the responses and seeing God work in their lives, whether that was through eating disorders or letting go of a guy who didn't treat them right, like God used that relationship for good. And so do I regret it? Not even for a second. So let me fast forward a few years later. I was terrified to date in the meantime, right? So I like would go on dates with guys, but I would get so freaked out. As soon as they wanted to like make it official, I would feel like I was gonna throw up. Like I would get so anxious and afraid and just like, ah. So I was out of college, working on my master's degree, and I still hadn't had a serious relationship since that first guy. And there was this guy at church who was really awesome. Like he was just kind and fun and just a really great guy. And I remember thinking like, but I gotta figure this out right away. Still that voice in my head, like, you only date the person you marry. You date with the idea of marriage, right? And I just like had this idea in my head, like, I don't know if I could see myself with him, and so I just shouldn't date him. And my pastor and his wife were so awesome. They were like, Tiffany, like, just give it a try. Just take it slow for a few months. Don't think about, can I marry him? Don't move too fast. Just get to know him, have fun, enjoy this time, and just then after a few months, reevaluate, like, is this someone I want to move forward with or not? So I tried to take their advice, and it's very difficult for an overachiever planner like me who wants to know every detail of her life before it happens. But I took their advice and started dating him. And even though he and I didn't end up together, those like 9 months of my life with him were amazingly healing. Like, I feel like he was healing balm for my soul. I know that sounds incredibly corny, but seriously, it was like dating him healed my heart in so many ways. And that's not to say you can only be healed if you date somebody. I'm not saying that. But for me, like, that's what God used to heal my heart in new ways. And like, to realize this is what a good man is like. This is what a healthy relationship is like. And to learn things like how to communicate with somebody, how to work through jealousy, how to work through just different things that came up. And then, you know, when James came along, which was my third serious relationship, I'd had like summer flings and dates before that, but not like another serious one. And when he came along, like, it was easier to see the difference. Like, having been through those past relationships, I knew things about myself. I knew things about what I wanted, even from going on dates with different guys that I don't think I would have known otherwise. Dating James, I was like, wow, like, this is different than any guy in the past. Like, there's something special here. And I was able to recognize that so much faster because of those exes and because of the guys I went on dates with. And like, James and I are not jealous of each other's exes. We're not like, I wish you hadn't dated them. Like, I feel like you stole a part of me. I feel like you gave away a piece of your heart to someone else. Like, there's none of that. It's just like, I'm grateful for his girlfriends in the past because he learned a lot from them that he brought into our marriage in a good way and was able to, you know, make our marriage healthier from the beginning. And I learned a lot from my exes, and the same thing. Like, I was able to know things coming into marriage that made our relationship healthier from the beginning. So again, it's not saying you have to date more than one person. It's not saying every guy is a great guy to take a chance on. Like, there's some guys who are just not worth dating. But the idea of having these past relationships, like, it's not a failure. It doesn't diminish your love for your spouse. It doesn't mean you're not honoring God. It doesn't mean you can't hear from God. Like, none of those things. It simply means like, you've had these past relationships and they can make you who you are. And that can be a really good thing. So be free. I love you. And I'll see you next week. Bye, ladies and brave gentlemen watching this.